In this section, we'll cover everything related to revision management in ArchiCAD, including topics such as change management, transmittals, controlling the deliveries of our project, and several other functions. This will also link seamlessly with the topics we have covered in the previous section, further expanding the administrative workflow we have developed so far. As always, go through the videos at your own pace, feel free to pause and rewatch them as many times as needed. And don't forget to check all the materials and additional content I have included within each lesson. With that said, let's get started. Alright, so let's start our first section commenting a little bit about specifics. Revision management. So how this is going to work and what is the purpose of revision management, because sometimes we learn the function but we don't understand what is the purpose. So let's say you got a project, the first version of the project, let's name it first version of the project over here. You have finished, you have all the documentation, all the documentation including floor plans, sections, elevations, etc. And you want to hand them out to your client so you can review the project. Your client will of course give you changes, make changes to the project, and this is where everything about revision management comes into play. This is where you can start registering the changes your client gives you inside ArchiCAD with all these functions to keep a track, to keep a record in the database of ArchiCAD about all the changes. And you have extremely amazing functions that will give you a lot of benefits later on, such as, for example, the model compare function, which will allow you to pretty much show you the client or whoever you want to show. This is a before and this is a after. Okay, so all the changes you can, for example, visualize them in the model compare function. You got more benefits, such as, for example, the possibility of creating a summary of all the changes your project has suffered. Maybe a delivery summary, which were the dates, how's the status. You also got the one amazing tool I'm going to show you actually in the model, which is called the revision history object. Okay, this is a smart object that will include all types of data in your layout footing, in your layout data right over here. You can position this object called the change history or the revision object, and it will include all the information regarding changes inside this object. Okay, so this is quite an amazing, interesting feature that ArchiCAD offers you. To give you specifics, I'm going to give you a sample project, a base model we're going to work on. It has been translated from Spanish to English. I made sure to translate the most important stuff, but you might see one or two bits of Spanish over there, so it's not going to mess up a little bit. It's not going to mess up the process. And where all the magic is going to happen is going to be the change manager. I'm going to explain you in full detail how you can use the change manager, how you can create your changes, how you can create or link your elements to each of the changes you create over here. So pretty much all the magic happens here, and also the rest of the magic will happen in the transmittals or the deliveries. I'm not very familiar with the transmittal word, so I'm going to call it delivery, but we can call it however we want. Transmittal or delivery, however you want in your own country. This is where ArchiCAD will keep a track of all the versions of your project, all the changes that have suffered and have modified your project, and ArchiCAD will automatically tell you which layouts have a change, so you don't need to print the layout twice. It's going to filter out for you automatically which layouts you need to print and which layouts you need to hand out with the new changes. Okay, we're going to explain the new change window, the change tool, how you can create traditional marks of changes if you want to use this type of representation, which is quite simple. The revision history object, which is a smart object we mentioned earlier, how ArchiCAD will filter out the information for you automatically, and how we can go ahead with a workflow for the layouts. Okay, we will also comment how the model compare function works. And finally, but not least, how you can use the project index function to create an automatic summary of all the information you have registered so far. So pretty much this is what the module, the section is going to be about. So take a moment to make sure you have ArchiCAD open up, and for the next lesson we can start off with the base model and the first series of functions. Alright, so let's begin by opening the provided base model. It's this file over here. It's a PLA file, but keep in mind that the version of ArchiCAD is 28, so that's the only detail. However, if you want to work on your own project, feel free to do so. The workflow is pretty much the same. Once you open up the project, if you jump into the view map over here, we got a little bit of everything. We got schematic views, we got floor plans, which I made sure to translate as best as possible to an international version. If you find some stuff in Spanish, no worries about that much. The objective here is to review the workflow. But yeah, you got a little bit of everything. You got also perspectives, schemes and lists, the zones, a little bit about architecture, and some analytical models that you can also check out. But the most important thing here is that everything has been modeled. Now you can take whichever element you want to take into consideration and start creating changes, okay? Now before we begin, just make sure that you quickly jump into File, Libraries and Objects, Library Manager, and simply make sure that you add the ArchiCAD library for your native ArchiCAD. In my case, it's going to be ArchiCAD 28. If you're working in a newer version, just simply make sure you add the libraries, because usually when you open up a PLA type of file, the libraries are going to be unlinked. But yeah, now let's go into the Change Manager. This is where most of the magic, not all the magic, but most of the magic will happen. So you can activate the Change Manager in multiple ways. For now, you have the pop-up type of navigator, which is this one, but also you can make it completely fixed in your window. However, in both of the cases, you can, for example, activate the pop-up navigator, and you can click the links, the options over here, and you have the Show Change Manager option right over here. This is the one that we want to activate. If you have a fixed type of navigator, you can also hit the options over here, and right over here you can find the Show Change Manager option window. It's going to be this floating window. You can also activate this window in another way. If you jump into the menu bar right over here in Window, you can go to Palettes and you can activate the Change Manager. It's right over here. So this is where you can find it, Window, Palettes, and Change Manager. Now you have a third option before ArchiCAD 28 where you click the Change Manager icon over here. In ArchiCAD 28 this has been a little bit more simplified. The toolbar has been simplified and now it's not going to display. But in an older version of ArchiCAD you can simply hit the Change Manager icon somewhere around here and you can activate this real easy. In the Change Manager window, if we go over here, you will find three main tabs: Changes, Elements, More, and you also have the transmittal window, or as we already commented, I'm going to call it Deliveries for a more easier way to call it. But yeah, you got the changes. This is where you can create changes for your project once you get into the reviewing process with your boss, with your client, with who you want to review the project. You can also activate the archived and active types of changes. This is something we're going to comment in a little bit, no worries here. So you got all the changes over here. You also have, for whichever change you create, you can always link which elements of your BIM model are going to be related to this change. So it's much easier to identify which change is going to occur where, okay, which change is going to affect which elements, okay. And in the more options, you also got the most important button, which is deliveries or transmittals, how Graphisoft wants to call them. You can call them in whichever way you want to call it. You activate the transmittal or delivery history, and right over here you can start creating your different deliveries. In long story short, this is where you're going to say, okay, let's create the first delivery. This is going to be the version number 1 of the project, and it's going to include these changes. Okay, so we are done with these changes. Let's close the delivery, and now let's open a version number 2 of the project, and let's create the changes for the version number 2. This is something that I want to illustrate in a little bit, so let's make a small pause over here. I'm going to explain this in the next lesson. But in long story short, the change manager is where all the magic is going to happen. So you can always take this window. You can, for example, move this around. You can place it over here, or you can place it right over here. In my own personal case, I usually leave it floating around. Okay, so take a moment, make sure you check out the change manager, and in a second I will explain how the deliveries or the transmittals are going to work. Alright, so having commented the change manager, let's take a moment to comment how the transmittals or the deliveries are going to work, which is an essential part of this workflow. Okay, so for this case, I'm going to go into the layout book. Let's simply open up maybe the first layout we got over here. So we got the ground floor for this project, and we got the footing, which is going to be, the layout footing, this one over here. And we also find an interesting object, which we're going to focus on for this section, which is the change history. Okay, now the amazing thing about the change history is that it's a smart object. You can find it in the native library of ArchiCAD. You simply place it, and it's going to extract all the information you generate in the change manager, in the transmittals, and simply illustrate it over here in a graphical manner, which is included within your footing. Okay, this is something we're going to comment in a little bit, but before we begin, let's focus now on transmittals. So in first place, let's go over here to the More tab. You can find it here, and simply activate the transmittals button over here. And once you open up the window of the book settings, the transmittals, we want to focus for now only on the transmittal history, which is this window we got over here. So what we have to do now, before we start reviewing the project with the client, with the boss, is tell ArchiCAD this is going to be the first version of the project with these types of changes, with these types of elements. So simply go over here, new transmittal set. We simply hit this button right over here. It's going to give you a new window where you can specify the ID, the name, the set date, the transmitted by. And you also got description, but this one is in Spanish. I'm pretty sure that this one has been created. You can create extra data, description, for example, authorized by, the one who was reviewed with, the date of the review. You can pretty much include all types of metadata or additional data you want to create, okay? If you want to include extra data, you simply hit over here, schemes. Okay, so you will find that some data has been created by default, and this one, which is description but in Spanish, we can take a moment, just maybe set it in English. Description, then we can add, for example, maybe authorized by, reviewed, review date or something like that. You can create as many data as you require for your project. Okay, so you can pretty much save all types of data. You simply hit OK, and the transmittals or the deliveries will also include these types of data that you want to register. For this case, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to keep the description, only this basic data set. Okay, so in scheme, I'm simply going to delete the examples that I created over here, delete anyways. Maybe delete this one too. Okay, keep in mind that you also can, for example, import, export the data set. It's not going to export field by field, but you export the whole package. So if you export this, it's going to create an XML type of file, and then you can import the dataset into another type of file. For this case, let's keep it simple. I'm just going to include description, basic as it is. So each delivery is only going to include these types of data. So the first delivery is going to have the ID. We can set it to maybe version number 1 or simply number 1. You can name it however you want, okay? And the name, let's name this as delivery 1, okay? New project, something like that. Or we can call it completely new project. Okay, completely new project. Transmitted set date, work in progress, transmitted by, and the description, we can include something like this is the first version of the project. Something, you can include whichever data you want, okay? Now, about these options, don't worry about this too much for now. Let's keep it simple with this data set. So when we press OK, what's going to happen is that it's going to include all the layouts that you have created, all the final layouts that you have finished up are going to be included within this version of the project. ArchiCAD is going to say, okay, all these layouts have a change because we are still in the first version of the project, okay? This is just a matter of saying, okay, the first version of the project, the main changes were over here in all these data sets. When you press OK, something interesting is going to happen with the change history. It's going to tell you something like work in progress. We are still creating the changes for the first version of the project. So yeah, it's going to change. This object is sensible to all the action happening in the change manager. No need to worry about this too much. For now, what we can do once you finish creating all the changes for the first version of the project, we can once again go into transmittals. And if you are done with a version of your project, you can simply go ahead, proceed with close transmittal set. This is a manner of telling ArchiCAD, okay, we created and we finished the first version of the project in this date. So we create a new registry which includes all these layouts, which includes the first version of the project. And in the registry in ArchiCAD, we also include this date. All right, and once you have created the registry for the first version of the project, what's going to happen? You can print everything. ArchiCAD, for one instance, you can add this over here. It's going to mark that all these layouts are the ones that are going to be printed. If you notice, everything is blue. For now, it's going to mark everything as blue because it's completely new. But once we create the second version of the project, and once you create a change that affects some particular plans, ArchiCAD will tell you, okay, the plan that has a change is going to be architecture 4, maybe architecture 7, and architecture 10. So what's going to happen in the second version of the project is that ArchiCAD will tell you this one, and this one are going to be marked in blue. It's a way of ArchiCAD telling you that the only layouts that you have to print, which include a change, are going to be these 3 layouts over here. So the reason why it becomes blue is because right over here, ArchiCAD will automatically include all the layouts that have some type of change. Okay, so that's one amazing thing about ArchiCAD. Now, when you are done with your first version of the transmittal of the delivery, simply press OK. Let's go ahead to the publisher sets, a function which we already explained in Basic BIM Framework in one of the first courses. And let's simply create the first publisher set, which is something like final project in PDF file. So let's go ahead to publisher, simply press the plus icon over here. Let's name this PDF exportation, something like that. Let's create the publisher set. As always, right click this and actually now let's open this up. Okay, once it's open up, now we right click it and we activate the organizer. Okay, in the organizer, simply make sure that you include the whole layout. In this case, all the layouts that you have in your project. In this case, I'm going to take architecture. We can drag it and drop it or click over here, add shortcut, however you want. And the same is going to happen in the publisher set. When you create the first version of the transmittal or the delivery, ArchiCAD is going to mark everything in green. It's going to tell you, okay, so all these layouts are completely new or have a new change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to publish everything over here. Everything marked in green is going to be published, okay? So pretty much that's it for now. What's going to happen? You have created an entry, you have created a registry and date for your first version of the project, a completely fresh project, okay? So what's going to happen now is you proceed normally, you print this project, you hand it out to your client or to your boss or to whoever is going to review the project. That person is going to review the project. The person is going to give you changes. Okay, you have to include this or you have to modify here and there. And what's going to happen now, when you start creating the changes for your project, it's extremely important that now you're going to create a new transmittal set and you are going to name this, in ID you can put it something like version number 2, and you can name this first set of changes, something like that. Description, changes created, first set of changes created to the project. First changes applied to the project, something like that. Okay, so you simply create a new entry in the transmittal history where you also have the date. This is going to be version number 2 of the project, and it's now going to include the first set of changes that we're going to create to the project. Okay, so the interesting thing here is that if we press OK, let's press OK. Okay, there it is. For some reason it's not going to update the layout. Let's see if we can update this, but yeah, it's not going to say work in progress because this layout over here doesn't have any type of change. Don't worry about this too much. We're going to see this in action later on. But right over here you can add this change history, description. This is the first version of the project. It didn't have any change and it doesn't have any ID. Yeah, we're going to adjust this object also, no worries about that. But the most important thing here is that the transmittals now have been created. You have created a new entry for the first version of the project, and for the second version of the project, before you start working on your changes, you have created a new transmittal or a new delivery. And each time you open up a cycle of changes, you have to follow this workflow. So take a moment, check out the transmittals. Now this workflow is not over yet because now in the next lessons I'm going to tell you what's going to happen over here according to the changes that we start creating. Alright, so you have created the second version of the project, okay, which is going to include now new changes. What we're going to do now is, let's simply go over here, let's press OK to close this window. Let's go over here to the view map and let's open up maybe the ground floor. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, your client, your boss, or whoever reviews the project told you, okay, we need to create a change over here. How about we delete these objects we got over here and we simply move these benches to this place. This is going to be the first change we apply to the project. So what is the workflow that you're going to follow? Okay, in first place, in the change manager, what we have to do is we're going to press this button, new change, okay? And this is where you can include all types of data regarding the change. This is going to be change number 2, change number 1, whichever data you want to include. I'm just going to name it change 1 in the ID. The name of the change is going to be something like move benches, something basic. Last modified by, it's going to give you the user. And you can also click the scheme button in the same manner as in transmittals in order to open up the window where you can create all sorts of metadata, all sorts of data you want to include for your project. Okay, now it's the same over here. I didn't notice I got something left out in Spanish, so I'm just going to rename this in English. Description. You can include all sorts of data you want to apply. For example, let's add another field which can be something like urgency, which is low, medium, high, whichever data you want to use. Maybe reviewed by, something like that, or you can, for example, include something like category, or whichever field you want to pretty much include. Okay, for this case I'm going to keep it also simple, only going to include ID, name, the basic metadata we got over here, and also I'm going to include simply the description. Okay, so let's maybe include the description. Right over here I'm just going to describe a little bit about what this change is about. We took the benches, deleted the boxes on the right, and moved the benches to the new position. Something like that. I'm sorry for my English, not the most perfect English in the world. So there it is. We have created a new entry in our database. Okay. So what's going to happen now? Once you are done with your new entry, you simply proceed normally. You take these elements, you maybe delete them, and you simply apply the change. Let's take, for example, these benches. Let's rotate them over here. And okay, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really like the new update about ArchiCAD. If you don't like this either, you can go ahead over here, guides, and simply deactivate distant guides over here. Okay, and we simply move this somewhere over here. Okay, so it's going to have a perfect position. So this was change number 1. Okay, so what's going to happen now? You are done, you are finished applying the change in your model directly, no worries. What you're going to do now is, in order to register this a little bit better, you are going to select the entry you have created over here, and in elements of the change number 1, what you have to do is simply select the elements that have been modified. I'm going to take, for example, these benches over here, and you simply include them. You link them to the new entry you have created. So let's press the plus button over here. And now this change also includes this element. So what we can do is, when we, for example, click this element or hit this change and we don't really remember what happened over here, we can select this right over here, and it's going to tell us, okay, the change is going to apply to these benches over here. Okay, now we have something really interesting going on in ArchiCAD. ArchiCAD is going to automatically also detect this element which layouts is going to affect. So for example, if we had maybe a cut section over here which included these benches, and now these benches won't display, ArchiCAD is going to tell you, okay, the change is going to affect the cut section. The cut section is going to change a little bit. So what's going to happen is something interesting. If you go over here to the layout book, let's for example open up the ground floor. Right over here, almost instantly, you can see how it has been marked in blue. It's going to tell you, okay, so you have created a change to the project. Okay, it has been registered perfectly, and also in these objects you can notice something interesting going on over here. All the metadata has been registered in the change history object. Okay, don't worry about this object, I'm also going to explain this in detail. But ArchiCAD automatically detected that this layout has suffered a change. Okay, now you can also be completely sure which layouts are going to be affected by the change. If you select all the layouts over here, you also have this amazing button, Update Layout. This is the button that we're going to be using quite oftenly when creating changes within ArchiCAD. So once you create your change, you simply select everything, hit the update or refresh button, and ArchiCAD is going to update everything, and it's also going to make sure to detect which layouts have some sort of change going on over there. So let's give it a few seconds to finish up. Alright, and now you can notice something interesting going on over here. So of course, the change we have created will affect a bunch of layouts. Which are the layouts that are affected? Well, ArchiCAD is going to tell us, okay, ground floor is going to be affected by this change. So you have to print this out once again. Upper floor and roof floor won't be affected, no worries over there. It's not going to tell you work in progress over here. And this keeps completely, you don't need to really print out another version of this layout. It will remain the same. Longitudinal sections will be affected because maybe the change, yes, we can notice this object in this section. So yeah, it's going to be affected in the longitudinal section. If you want to print it out, go ahead. It's also going to mark transversal sections that has suffered change. Maybe in this hallway, yes, it's going to include some sort of change, and it's going to include the change in the change history object over here. For some reason, it also included elevations, which I personally don't like too much because the object is in the interior, but okay, whatever. So yeah, it's pretty much going to tell you in blue, this change you have created, move benches, now are going to affect this layout, this one, and everything marked in blue. So this is quite an interesting thing going on with ArchiCAD. When you create a change, it automatically will detect which layouts you have to print out once again. And of course, once you set the second transmittal, once you close the second transmittal, or once you finish closing the second delivery, okay, because right now it's still work in progress, but once you close the delivery, you update the publisher, and this is also going to be marked in green, okay? So pretty much this is the main workflow for a change. If you notice, it's quite an interesting workflow over here. It may be confusing in the beginning, but hopefully I could make it clear how you are going to proceed with your changes, okay? Let's make another example, another quick example over here. So let's say that our client told us for the first version of the project, okay, we have a storage room over here, and I don't want this type of layout. I want something like this, maybe L-shaped or U-shaped. So what I want to do is, how about we delete one of these objects and we position this object in order to create this sort of layout, okay? So the workflow begins once again. Let's, in the change manager, let's create a new change, okay? It's going to have the ID, new layout in storage, okay? And I'm going to include the description instead of layout in columns. The new layout is U-shaped, something like that. Sorry for my English as per usual, but let's take a moment. Let's apply the change. I'm simply going to take this element. How about we rotate this one? Okay, something like this. There it is. And I'm simply going to model this directly. Okay, so right over here, there it is. We have created the change. Now, before we put an end to the change, don't forget, select the objects that were affected by the change and simply link them to your change. So ArchiCAD will automatically detect which layouts are also going to be affected by the change. Once again, when you are done with your change, you can select everything and simply hit the update button. So it's going to run once again, it's going to auto-detect which layouts are going to be affected by this object. And then it's going to tell you, okay, you definitely need to print these layouts once again. Okay, so let's give it a few seconds. And yeah, there it is. Okay, now let's create a third change for this version. Let's say in the upper floor. So it also marks this in blue. But let's say in the upper floor, our client told us, okay, I don't really want anything going on over here. I don't really want these two boxes over here. So what you're going to do is, let's say I want to delete these two boxes over here, and you're simply going to include an extra set of benches over here. This is going to be the hypothetical change. So let's once again open up the upper floor. We delete, we simply apply the change directly. I'm just going to delete these objects. I'm going to mirror this object over here. Okay, so this is going to be the main change that we apply in the upper floor. Okay, we can also mirror or simply copy these two objects over here. And there it is. Okay, let's create the change. Change number 3, lobby and waiting room. Okay, delete the vending machines and include more benches, something like that. Okay, and now we select all the elements that were affected by the change, which are these 3 elements we got over here. Okay, so we have to link everything because of course it's going to, for one instance, it's going to affect the layouts. But if you remember, we also mentioned we have an amazing function going on over here, which is the compare models function. You also want to link everything because ArchiCAD will identify later on, will identify this much easier. Okay, and once it has been linked, when we update the layouts once again, it's going to mark now the upper floor in blue. So let's give it a few seconds so it finishes updating everything. And there it is. Now ArchiCAD will tell us, okay, so you also have a change in upper floor. And it's also going to tell us in the object, you have a work in progress going on over here. So you got a change. And the only one that hasn't been affected was the roof floor so far. If we create a change in the roof floor, let's say maybe add some type of element over here, something over here, ArchiCAD is also going to mark this in blue. But for now, I'm simply going to keep it simple with 3 basic changes so I can explain what's going to happen now for the next delivery. So as always, before we proceed, take a moment, make as many changes as you want. Make sure that you at least create 3 different changes, something like that, in different views. And for the next lesson, now I'm going to explain what's going to happen with the new version of the delivery or transmittal. Alright, and before we proceed into publishing the second version of the project, I just want to comment how you can also use the change tool properly, effectively, because well, maybe in basic BIM framework or maybe previously you simply take this tool, quite a simple tool to use. Let's set the layer to maybe something like changes. How about we also make this layer visible? Okay, so I'm going to activate this layer of changes. It's going to be visible in floor plans. Let's press OK. And in the floor plan, we simply draw left click, and there it is. Okay, so this would be more of a traditional way of marking a change. You proceed with the floor plan. You can also proceed this way in ArchiCAD, but there's a much better way of doing so. So you activate the change tool over here. Let's go into the settings. Let's give it a quick review over here. You also got the change ID, the name, the type of marker. Now, the type of marker, this is the interesting part. It is going to give you multiple options. You can create a non-linked marker, which would be a completely traditional way of doing the changes. Okay, it's only going to be in 2D. It's going to be placed only in 2D. Okay, but now you can also specify if you want to create a new change with this tool. Okay, or if you want to link this into something that we already have created previously. Okay, so for example, if you create a new change and you proceed to create a new change over here, it's also going to create a new entry in the change manager. So it's going to skip one step, and you simply need to finish the process by linking the elements that suffer the change to the change. Okay, but what we can do now, since we have already created the entry in the change manager, is simply select the place linked mark, and then we simply select one of the changes that we have created. If you notice over here, I got a little bit ahead of myself and I already placed a change, and it created a completely new change right over here. So this one I'm going to delete later on, but let's select the one we first off created, which was move benches. Okay, so it's going to be linked, this marker is going to be linked to this change over here. For the marker, you can always go ahead, use whichever object you want to use. Since this was migrated from a Spanish library, well, it's going to be in Spanish. No worries, in a new project, you can always use your own marker. You can set the size, you can set whichever parameters you want to use. You also got the marker text style, so you can adjust the marker however you want. This one is going to be in Spanish because it's, as always, has been migrated from a Spanish project. But you can always define the shape, the shape, the style you want for your marker. Whether the cloud is going to be polygonal, whether it's going to be random or something a little bit more uniform. So feel free to go ahead and use whichever option you want to customize to your marker. So once you have linked your change, simply press OK. Now change number one, if I remember well, was these benches over here. So let's place a new marker, which is going to mark this on the ground floor. There it is. And doesn't finish convincing me too much. So how about we maybe take these elements and we display them on the front. There it is. So as you can see now in the entry right over here, change number one will include the element, but it also includes the marker we have placed. So it's going to mark this in the ground floor in a more traditional way of representing changes to your project. And also it's going to be linked in the database of ArchiCAD. Okay. If you want to skip the step of creating changes over here, you can also, for example, take the change tool. As well recommended, you can set this option to create a new change. So you simply name this. Let's name this maybe in public area, something like that. And let's say that we want to make a change to maybe the judges bench over here. So we simply mark this with the change tool. So it's going to position the change, and now it's also going to create a new entry. Okay, so this tool is amazing. If you notice, it's not only in 2D, it's also going to create a new entry in the Change Manager database. Okay, so take a moment, check out this amazing tool, and now we can proceed commenting more concepts. So having created the different changes, let's take a moment to comment now what's going to happen with the second transmittal, with the second revision. Okay, so in first place, what we have to do is right over here in transmittals, let's click this one more time. And what we not want to do is for the second version of the delivery, for the second version of the transmittal, we need to define with add layout button which layouts are going to be included within this second delivery. Now, if you notice, yes, we said that ArchiCAD will automatically define which layouts, for example, have some type of change going on over here. But let's be real, not all the layouts have some type of change because, for example, maybe these benches, yes, ArchiCAD will mark that the elevations, for example, the elevations will also have, are also going to be affected by the change. But in reality, the change won't be even visible in the elevations. So what we want to do is only mark which layouts are going to be affected. And those are going to be the ground floor, the upper floor, the sections, the elevations. We said that we want to exclude them, okay? Maybe the isometric perspective, and yeah, well, the perspectives, we can also keep them, okay? But we want to exclude the elevation. So what we have to do is in transmittals, when we select this second version, add layout, we will define which are the final layouts that we're going to publish, okay? So we're going to select everything that is marked in blue, except the ones we are pretty completely sure that won't have any type of notable change, and we're going to add these layouts. So this is the most important thing, because with this we keep a track, we keep a record of which are the definite changes that are going to be applied in the layouts. Okay, so you hit OK. With this, you can notice now what's going to happen is that in the publisher, ArchiCAD will mark, okay, so you have told me that everything that I preliminarily marked in blue has a change, but you said that elevations are going to be excluded. So these ones are not going to be marked, but now we can publish only the ones that are marked in green. Okay, so I'm going to publish in the new version these types of plans. Okay, now there is a second way on how you can also indicate a little bit better also, but it will take some time, but this is optional. This is just a better way of having some control. If you're totally sure that the changes you created won't affect the elevations, you can also unlink the changes from the layout. You can do so if you open that layout, and instead of transmittals, you have a second button over here which is called layout revisions. Okay, let's hit layout revisions. Now you will notice that in this layout, the two changes that are referenced will be change number 1 and change number 2. So what we can do is simply delete them from this layout, and now this layout won't be included within these changes. So when we press OK, what's going to happen is that you can clearly see that ArchiCAD won't mark this layout anymore in blue color, meaning that the two changes are now not linked within this layout. Okay, let's do the same for the next layout. Let's activate, for example, the elevations over here. Let's go to layout revisions in the change manager, and we can simply exclude these two changes for this layout. Okay, so what's going to happen is that we won't get the work in progress legend anymore going on over here, and ArchiCAD has completely excluded these two layouts from the set of changes we are creating so far. Okay, so the only changes, the only layouts that we are going to publish are going to be the ones marked in blue. And finally, but not least, this is just a faster way of publishing your project. Now that you're sure that the only documentation you're going to review for the second revision is going to be the marked in green, because you're going to recycle pretty much everything else. Okay, you can also set right over here in the publish button, next to it you will find a small option. You can select which items you want to publish, whether you want to publish the entire set, it's going to publish pretty much everything, or you can also select this option which only will publish everything marked in green. You select layouts in current transmittal set. So having created the layout revisions, having checked out this option over here, in the transmittals we only got these layouts that are published. What we can do now is go ahead in the transmittals, we can go ahead and simply put an end to this delivery, close the transmittal set. Drawings on some layouts might be outdated or affected. Okay, let's continue anyway. Press this one, and now we got the first set of changes. The transmittal set date now is set. Let's press OK. So there it is, and now let's hit publish. It's going to ask us where we want to publish the set, so let's simply define that we want to publish this. Maybe quickly, to be real quick, I'm just going to create a new folder in the desktop, okay, which is going to be the second delivery. Okay, second delivery, something like this. And now let's select this folder, press OK, and press OK. So far the publisher set is defined. Let's go ahead, let's see what's going to happen. And there it is. You can see how ArchiCAD, with this option enabled, is only going to be publishing the layouts, the documentation marked in green. Okay, it's not going to publish architecture 3, 6, 7, and 11. It's only going to publish everything is marked in green. So in this manner, you can accelerate your workflow. You don't need to print out the same layouts again, and you only print out the layouts or the documentation that has suffered a change. Okay, So as always, take a moment, check out the transmittals, check out layout revisions, and check out this small function we commented over here. And for the next lesson, now we can continue covering extra options for the change manager. Alright, so having commented the main workflow for the changes, let's comment now how you can create this object, because in the test model, the base model that I provided you, the change history object was already included, but the question is how can you program this from scratch. Okay, so for this case I'm going to open up maybe some type of layout. Any type of layout is fine. Let's go over here to design, to objects. Let's open up the default settings right over here. And in the basic library, you can find the 2D elements folder over here. You can still find it, scroll down a little bit. If I remember well, in graphic symbols, yes, we have it right over here in 2D elements folder, graphic symbols, and this is where you will find this amazing object called the revision history detailed. Now you got a nice Easter egg going on over here. Usually in some of my courses I've mentioned an Easter egg going on. If you set the rows by 4 and this one by 4, it's going to activate the 2048 minigame over here. Something similar going on with the Tetris game we got inside ArchiCAD, but this is an Easter egg included within the revision history detailed option. Okay, you can simply hit the back to work over here. If accidentally one time you input 4x4 and you get this minigame, you can always change it manually with back to work. Okay, but yeah, let's go back to work actually for now. Right over here in the revision history object, if you press OK, let's simply position it. This is a nice object because what's going to happen is this is a way of extracting all the data you got so far in the change manager, all the data you got so far also in transmittals, and you extract this data and represent it or document it included within your layout. So it's a nice way of taking all the data and representing it in a layout. Okay, now since this is locked, I'm not going to be able to make any changes, so don't forget for the changes you actually need to activate the master layout. This is something already commented in Basic BIM Framework, so let's go ahead to the master layout. And for some reason everything is grayed out over here, so I'm just going to take the pen over here and activate the site plan. There we go. Okay, now let's position once again this object. For some reason it's going to be rotated, so okay, I'm just going to rotate it back over here. Now, by default, it's going to be extremely large. You don't want this going on over here. So what you can do is go ahead and tinker around with the revision history settings, okay? In first place, you can define the style. How many rows, how many units you want for each row. If we maybe set 4 rows in totals with 1 unit, there it is. We're going to get something basic, okay? This could be a nice starting point. You can define the borders, you can define the sorting, you can define the units, you can define the text style, pretty much everything related to the style of this object. But the interesting stuff is going to happen right over here in content. This is where you can start adding more content or less content dependent upon which data you want to extract and want to showcase in this object. So let's say I want to include maybe the revision ID, the change ID, name, the transmittal set date, and the last extra field I want to include is going to be the description, which is one of the... Okay, I got 2 going on over here, so whatever. I'm going to take maybe the first one. Let's see how this one behaves. So yeah, you can include as many fields as you want over here. You simply press the plus icon over here and you include the field you're comfortable with. Okay, so I'm going to right now I'm just going to keep it simple. If I included 5 types of data over here for the changes, these 5 data types are the ones I'm going to include over here. Also, I preferably I set this to be centered. So this is what's going on in content. In custom titles, this is where you can set your own titles, but you can also keep the original title. If you got change name, you got the description, we don't really need to modify anything else over here, but maybe in revision ID, we can set something custom as ID. In the change ID, we can set this to just be change, maybe change number, something like that. Change name, date, and description. So it's looking good. So this is where you can set your custom titles, as the name implies. You got the additional display options. If you remember, you also got the work in progress legend we saw earlier in the previous lessons. When we created a change and one layout was set in blue, it would display the work in progress legend in this object, which was something like this. Okay, work in progress in diagonal. So this is where you can activate this type of legend. If you want to showcase it, you simply activate this option over here, but you can also deactivate it because maybe you want to publish a quick layout or something like that. In my case, I rather activate this to remind me that we still need to put an end to this current transmittal. So in this matter, we can put an end to the transmittal and it's going to delete this legend. This is where you can define how you want to represent the legend, how you can set the marker and all that stuff. You also got the 2D representation and text, where you can set all the different options for the borders, for the text, for the colors and all that stuff. Quite simple, just matter of taking some time, tinkering around. And for some reason, you also got the 2048 minigame going on over here, which is just an Easter egg ArchiCAD has with this nice object. Let's maybe include 5 rows. Let's press OK. Let's see how the object looks so far. And there it is. We're going to get the order. Well, the order doesn't really convince me that much because we want to reverse this. First off the ID, then the change number, then the name, the date, the description. Let's see if we can sort this in a different manner. Maybe this icon over here is going to fix it. Nope. I'm going to take maybe a moment. I'll just tinker around with the parameters. Okay, so the fix was simple. I simply reversed everything but in the content. So instead of revision ID as the first one, I set this to be the last one and simply reversed the data I got over here. So in this manner, we can fix the order of the info. Okay, I'm going to maybe delete this for now. So I'm just going to include a completely new one from scratch so we can add this and review how we can create the table. You can also select all the, you got multiple interactive nodes over here. You can select, for example, the border over here, and it's going to adjust everything for you. You can also change the measurement of each column if you, for example, select one of the interactive nodes and start messing around. Okay, so for example, if I want to make this smaller, because revision ID is just a number, maybe even we can set a custom title such as ref ID, something like that. And now we can set a custom size over here. Okay, maybe I'll switch this to be change. Okay, change ID. Let's press OK. So yeah, this one is going to be smaller. Like this. Change name. We can set this to be also a little bit smaller. Transmittal date. This one is going to be a little bit bigger. And then the description is going to be the biggest. Okay, so let's take a moment. Set the description, and there it is. So with this, it's going to fit perfectly nice over here. Okay, I'm going to set this to be delivery date, change name. Okay, a little bit abbreviated, and description. Let's press OK. So it's looking a little bit better. So yeah, I'm just going to take one more minute, maybe tinker around with the text and all that stuff. And there it is. With this, we have a nice table that will fit in with all the info that we want to include. Okay, so we got revision ID, change name, the delivery date, and the description. Okay, let's adjust this a little bit there. Okay, so now what's going to happen is that with each passing version of the transmittal, if you remember, so far we got two different versions of transmittals. One which included changes that applied to this set of layouts, and the first version included pretty much everything. Okay, and now in this nice table, you can notice how we got revision ID number 1. The first transmittal only had the first version of the project, no changes. And for this layout, for this current layout, the ground floor, for the transmittal number 2 or for the delivery number 2, we had only two changes which apply to this current layout, the ground floor, one of which is called move benches, new layout, which were applied in this date, the date I'm recording this, and the description was, well, you can include the description of the transmittal or the description of the changes, first set of changes applied to the project. Maybe over here I made a small mistake because I named both descriptions simply as description, so let's see if we can switch this instead of description for the transmittal. We can set this as the description but for the changes. Let's see how this one behaves. So I'm going to go back for the ground floor, and there it is. We now get a nice description for each change. We took the benches, deleted the boxes, blah blah. Instead of a layout in columns, the new layout is U-shaped. Okay, and with each passing revision, you now get a nice table which will include all the information you have saved and registered in your ArchiCAD database. So this is how this object will operate. This is a really nice object which will pretty much do all the work for you. You simply need to be careful with your workflow and organize all the info through the change manager. So as always, takes a moment. Make sure you check out the change history object, and in the next lesson we can continue covering extra concepts. Alright, so having commented the change history object, let's comment now how you can use the archive change option. It's quite a simple option really, but let's just comment once again the workflow. For example, let's go to the ground floor. Okay, if you remember in our current workflow, so far we have created the completely new project, which was version 1 of the transmittal or the delivery. Then the first set of changes was version 2, which included the newly created layouts. And now what we can do is create a new transmittal set. Let's say that after we printed out these layouts, we handed them out to the client or to the boss. We reviewed the project, and now we have new changes that we need to execute. So what's going to happen now? Once again, we proceed to create a new transmittal. Okay, let's name this second set of changes, something like that. I'm not going to include a description for now. Okay, so we got a work in progress going on so far. Let's press OK. And now in the change manager, you can notice that when you want to create new changes, you will still display the older changes. So a nice way of controlling this so you don't mess around and maybe confuse the older changes with the new ones. You can simply hit right over here in this icon you got on the eye that will allow you to activate the visualization of the archived and active changes. Let's see if we can make this maybe a little bit smaller. There it is. We can simply hit the elements of change tree. So simply hit this icon. It's going to activate the visualization of archived and active. And you can select the 3 changes that now are outdated and simply hit the archive button over here. This is going to give you a prompt whether you want to keep the markers or you want to delete them. What we refer to the markers are going to be these elements in the ground floor. If you remember, we positioned a change marker over here. So ArchiCAD is asking, okay, do you want to delete this marker or do you want to keep them? Okay, for now I'm going to keep them. It's better off if we create two layers, hidden markers and visible markers, something like that. So let's simply keep them, and with this you can see that the old changes have been moved to the archived folder over here. Okay, and now we can simply proceed in the same workflow. I'm simply going to maybe modify the layouts a little bit. Let's rename this as old changes, and let's create a new layer which is called new changes, or let's name this changes new in this nomenclature so it's easier to find, and this one is going to be changes old. Okay, so well, I'm going to manage this in two different manners. Okay, there it is. So in the floor plans we are always going to keep hidden the changes old layer. Okay, this one is going to be turned off, and changes new is going to be active. There it is. Let's press OK. And there it is. With this you can still keep the markers and maybe still simply hide them. Okay, or you can delete them if you don't really need them anymore. You just keep an archive of the old changes. Okay, so let's maybe proceed with an hypothetical case. The third version of the project, or the second round of changes. Let's say that our client said, okay, I want to delete this facade, and let's extend the railing all the way over here. So we delete this facade and extend the railing is going to be one change. And the second change, let's say that, okay, I also want to extend or maybe make the lobby and waiting room a little bit bigger. So how about we sacrifice one cubicle and maybe make this space a little bit bigger. So the new space is going to be something like this. Okay, so I'm going to take 5 minutes off camera. I'm going to apply pretty much the same workflow, create change, apply the change, and then reference the change. So take a moment, create a new round of changes. This is going to be useful, especially in the compare models function. I'm going to explain in a moment, but take a moment, make some changes. Alright, so hopefully there it is. I got the main change, which was a space, and also modify the facade. If we go over here to the 3D model, you can notice that now this facade is gone, and I extended the railing. The railing is going to be linked to this change, and pretty much all the elements for the waiting room are going to be linked also to this change, which we have a lot of elements. Okay, maybe I'm just missing the markers. I'm going to add them up real quick, only 1 second. And there it is, 2 more changes, okay, which are quite important, especially for the last function we're going to cover in a little bit. But now we can say that we are pretty much done. So you can notice you got a folder of archive changes, your old versions of changes, and the active ones, which will follow the same workflow. So as always, take a moment, make sure you check out this amazing function, make sure you archive your changes, create a new set of changes. So we can also review one of the most amazing functions, which would be the compare models function, and we can put an end to the section with the different index that we're going to create in a moment. Right, so having commented the archive change function, let's proceed now with the compare model function, which is one of the best functions that ArchiCAD has, which is going to allow us pretty much to visualize in 3D as the old version of the model, comparing to the new version, and how everything was changing along the time. Okay, for this case, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to put an end to this transmittal. Let's close the delivery, close the transmittal, let's press OK, and let's archive these 2 changes which were active but now Okay, so for some reason it wouldn't allow me to archive it because I didn't add the layouts that the changes were affecting. But now, since they were added, since I now closed the transmittal, if you want to reopen this, you can simply use the reopen last transmittal set option over here, which is going to allow you to create the additional changes. So now we can archive everything and keep the markers. Okay, so everything is archived. So yeah, let's say we have finished the workflow for the changes. Now we want to visualize everything. The first step would be to, of course, save a copy of the project. Since I haven't even saved the base model, I'm going to create simply a new copy, save as. I'm going to save it in the desktop, name it something like modified. Okay, this is going to be a PLN type of file, and let's save it on the desktop. Let's see if it works out with a PLA type of file. If it doesn't work out, we have to save everything in a PLN type of format. But the compare model function, you will find it right over here in design. Okay, you go to menu bar, design, and pretty much at the very end, you will find the model compare function right over here. Below the model check functions, which some of them we already commented in the constructive solutions with ArchiCAD course. But now let's focus on model compare, which is quite a simple and amazing function. Okay. Once you activate the model compare window, it's going to give you everything in blank. And the first step would be to select the models. You need to specify which is the first model and which is the second model. So the first model, we can set this to be the current model we are working on, which is a modified version, okay? But the second, well, this is going to be the first model in red, but the second model in blue, we need to specify which is going to be the model we want to compare it to, okay? You can set this to another type of file. You can also import this from Beam Cloud. For this case, I'm going to select a file. Let's see if it accepts. Yes, it will accept PLA files, so that's amazing. So what I'm going to do is I'll simply select the model I handed you out at the very beginning of this section. So we select the original model we want to compare. Let's hit open. So yeah, ArchiCAD is going to take some time to load the models in. And once you loaded in everything, simply hit the compare button. Okay, give ArchiCAD some time. It might take a little bit of time to generate the preview. Let's see if we can visualize something. That's okay, that's a little bit weird, but okay, and there it is. This is what I wanted to show you. Now, the reason why it didn't work the first time is that the model is taking the wrong view, okay? Because in this present model, we have saved the zone model, this one over here, which is going to be taken by default for the comparison, okay? So what you have to do right over here before we start comparing stuff, you need to hit which is the window that is going to be taken into consideration for the compare model function. Just click the window over here. It's going to open the 3D views you have saved right over here in the view map. Of course, to use this function, you need to save at least one 3D view, which is architecture over here. Once you open up the window, you will select which is the model you want to take into consideration from the 3 views, which is going to be, of course, architecture, model 1, and which is going to be the window to take into consideration for the model 2, also architecture. We select the zone model, and zone model, nothing is going to show. But if we select the architecture where all the beam elements are displayed, this is where the magic is going to happen, okay? You also got general view properties. You can visualize how stuff going on over here, and also parameters for the structural view properties, which we are not interested in for now. But for now, make sure you compare both architectural models. Let's hit compare. So ArchiCAD is going to take some time to run the analysis of your model. Now keep in mind something else that I did just to be extremely sure that I don't have any type of issue going on over here. I made sure to save everything as a copy. Okay, so I got my modified version in PLN type of extension. Okay, this one over here. And I also selected the modify type of file, also in PLN type of extension. Okay, so I just made a copy of both models, but this option is not extremely necessary. You can go ahead and use the current models. The most important thing is right over here is to compare the architectural views. Okay, once you get the compare model function running, this is where the magic starts to happen. You got the appearance tab over here where you can mess around. For example, you can display the first model, which was the original model. You can notice that it will pretty much highlight all the elements that suffered some type of change. Okay, all the elements that were referenced to, were modified. Okay, then you can hit it to the second, to the other extreme, where it's going to show the second model. So the second model with the new changes is going to look something like this. If you set this at a 50%, you can visualize and tell both your client to whoever you want. Okay, so everything in blue was, okay, so everything in red was the original proposal, and everything in blue is the new proposal. Okay, so we had a change over here. We also made a change to the main space over here. So the space completely changed, and let's, for example, set the view maybe something like that. If you remember, we said, okay, let's sacrifice a cubicle. This is the before, and this is the after. So we sacrifice a cubicle, make this space a little bit wider. Okay, so you can present this as this. And yeah, pretty much it's a matter of messing around with this slider. So you can visualize really easy, really simple, all the changes applied to your project. You can also use a second slider to define a little bit about the context. If the context is going to be a little bit more opaque, or if it's going to be a little bit more transparent. Okay, I'd rather set this to maybe something like 25%, so we can highlight the main stuff we're interested in, which is the change. Okay, and finally over here you also can play around with the criteria. You can play around with the checklist you want to run the comparison with. If it has some type of change in layers, maybe in structure, in geometry. Maybe you created a change in layer which doesn't really count, so you can maybe deactivate layers and it's not going to compare the changes in layers. Okay, so pretty much this is how compare model function is going to work. Quite a simple, but you can add this quite an amazing function you can also use in order to keep a track of all the changes your project has suffered. Okay, so as always, take a moment, make sure you mess around with this amazing function, and in the last section and in the last lessons we're going to comment a little bit about how you can also create project indexes where you summarize all the changes you have for your project. Right, and finally but not least, let's comment a little bit about the last series of functions, which would be the project indexes. Okay, you can find them over here in your project map, right below schedules. And trust me when I say this, if you already know how to use schedules, project indexes is pretty much the same. It only serves a specific function, is to extract all the data you have in your change manager and list it in a table. So I'm going to create a new project in ArchiCAD to show you how it's going to look. When you create a new ArchiCAD project, you will find over here in project indexes, you already have one of each type. You can create a change list, a drawing list, a sheet index, transmittal history, view leads, however you want to use this. Okay. In order to create a new one from scratch, which is the one we want to apply for this section, simply right click it, new project index. It's going to open up the window where you can specify an ID, you can specify a name, and you can specify a category, which type of data you want to extract. Data refer to views, data refer to layouts, to drawings, changes, transmittals, whichever data you want to extract and visualize over here. For this case, how about we start off with a summary of all the changes we got in this project. So how about we make it something like change number 1, change change index. Okay, we press OK, and there it is. We got the first index. So in criterias, yeah, we can add a criteria. It's going to be extremely limited. If you notice, it's pretty much the same as a schedule, but it's much simpler and much limited. So in criteria, you can select any change by ID, by name, by status, by description, whichever data you want to use. In this case, let me take a moment because I have revision management, the original file. So I'm going to close this project and open up the modified version. There it is. So I got all the data updated. I'm not going to add a criteria. How about we take all the changes so far? But on the fields, how about we include all the possible data we got from the changes, maybe the ID, the name, the description, last modified, and status. Let's see how it's going to behave, okay? You will see that it's completely going to be limited. You can include the field, but it's also going to be able to, well, you can also hide it. So I don't really see much sense in hiding it. You can simply not add it. But okay, you can add the field, hide it if you don't like it, however you want to use it. Let's press OK. Let's see how this one is going to behave. Let's proceed to open the change summary. So yeah, the same as with the schedule, once you open everything, it's going to be messed up. So don't forget to simply hit the scale button over here. We can scale and resize the columns and resize the rows to fit the content, okay? Then let's press the scale everything to fit the window button over here. Just going to fit everything into the window, and we could say that there it is. We get a nice summary or a nice list of all the changes we got in the project. So we got the change name, the description, last modified by, last modified date, and the status. If you notice, it's archived, okay? Or if we, for example, restore something, it's going to be transmitted, which is finished. Or if you reopen a transmittal or delivery, for example, I reopen the last delivery, reopen last transmittal, reopen, let's press OK. You can see that it's going to switch to work in progress. So we got 3 different status that a change can take. So pretty much this is how the index for the changes is going to work. Now it's just a matter of taking a minute and maybe applying some type of nice format going on over here. And there it is, looking nice. Okay, so let's do the same, but now maybe for the transmittals. Right click on project indexes, new project index, and let's create delivery summary, something like that. And for the category, we're going to choose transmittal set contents. Okay, let's press OK. We don't really need a criteria. We can simply proceed and add pretty much anything or everything. No, we don't really need a criteria over here, but how about we go over here to fields and let's see which data we can include for the transmittals. Let's include the set ID, the version, the name, the description, the status, and maybe the date. Okay, let's see how it's going to look. Let's press OK, delivery summary. And let's apply the same process. I'm just going to give a little bit of format for this index. And there it is. With this, we got a nice summary. You can notice the status. Since we opened up or reopened the last transmittal, it's going to display as work in progress, but everything else looking nice. We got a finish date, the status, description, name, and the version. Okay, so yeah, you can use project indexes, quite an amazing and easy function to use to create a summary of all the changes in a list and also in the transmittals. And the same as with, for example, with schedules, you can use this, for example, in a layout. You can maybe take the, let's see, project index, change summary, include this in a layout, which is a nice, we could say it could be even a nice replacement for the object, but feel free to use whichever option you want to use, whether it's going to be the object or maybe the index. So Feel free to use this however you want. This is a nice option. And the second way, we can also, if I remember well, we can also export this into Excel. Okay, simply open this change summary table over here. Let's navigate into file. Right over here, we can save this as, and it's going to allow us to export this into Excel. There it is. Okay, so this is how we can export everything really simple, really easy into another format. Okay, so yeah, pretty much we could say that we are done with the main framework, with the main workflow for revision management. So this is how you can manage revisions in ArchiCAD. If you notice, yes, it has a really structured and really solid workflow, but you can always apply the traditional workflow with maybe just a simple marker in 2D. You can do so, but you can also go ahead with the BIM way, which is through the change manager. Okay, so hopefully with this it is clear to you how you can apply this workflow. As always, apply it in your own work environment. Take some time, practice this as multiple times as you need. And with this, we can put an end to this section. And as you have seen, implementing revision management strategies can open up many opportunities when it comes to keeping your project versions under control. You probably noticed that you can manage everything in full BIM mode using the Change Manager, but you also have the option to use a traditional approach with the Change tool. The next module will be just as interesting, as I'll explain how you can collaborate on an online project with your team using BIM Cloud and features available in Teamwork. But before that, as always, take a short break before moving on to the next section. Without further ado, I'll see you in the next module.